The tournament is well underway. The first two rounds in the books, 16 teams left. I'm Daniel Gillman. Thank you so much for joining us once again. I am honored and pleased to be joined by the legendary head coach, former Texan, former USC national champion, Mick Haley. Mick, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure. This is really fun. It's fun to have volleyball in the spring.
It is. The fact that we don't have to wait too much longer for the 2021 season is just making this all so exciting. Two national seeds went down late on Sunday night. Western Kentucky and Pittsburgh advance over Utah and Washington State. But let's give a nice overview of this NCAA tournament, Mick. What were a few takeaways from those first two rounds for you?
Well, I thought the Pac-10 in particular kind of struggled a little bit. They had been having problems with getting their season finished. They had a rash of COVID there at the end. Washington didn't get to play. Washington State didn't get to play Washington or Utah. Utah lost their left side mid-season and seemed to lose their intensity. Both of the left-handers for Utah are really, really good. Drews didn't shine as much as I thought she might, but everybody keys on her now. So that was interesting to see how that happened. UCLA had a very tough draw with BYU, and we really didn't know how good BYU was because they'd only played in conference. They had handled USD during the season, and I think they had a close matches with Pepperdine, might have even split, I'm not sure. But that conference I thought wasn't going to do as well. And I think the committee did a good job of getting all three of those teams in because they represented themselves at a very high level. So that was interesting to me. The thing that I was impressed with was Florida seemed to be the team that's on the upswing. Of all the teams I watched, the team that really got after it, they didn't give Morehead State a chance to play. I believe that was their competition. Yep. And I thought Morehead State would do better. And it wasn't that the Morehead State didn't do badly. It was that Florida took the game away and didn't let them play. And if Florida can continue to play like that, and I would say this about Florida's setter, I was critical of her early in the year. I thought she might be a weak link, but boy, she has picked up her game. And she is carrying them right now. She leads those big hitters around, and they perform for her.
Yeah, Marley Montserrat. I actually broadcasted her sister, Allie, back when I was a Gator, but they're going to have a fun one with Ohio State. We'll get to all of the Sweet 16 matchups in a minute. I'll give you all the start times. The West Coast Conference, though, Mick, Pepperdine took Baylor to 5. That was a fantastic match. San Diego had set point to force a fifth against Louisville, but the Cardinals move on. That top right portion could have ACC written all over it as Louisville will take on Washington and Pittsburgh versus Minnesota. But let's talk a little bit about the Big Ten Conference. Penn State didn't get that Rice competition that we thought they might, unfortunately, because of the no contest. So they kind of cruised by. But were there any Big Ten teams? I guess Purdue was probably the only one that really struggled in that first set, but they came back from down 24-18 to sweep High Point. 6 for 6 in the Big Ten, probably the conference to beat right now.
Probably because of the numbers, but not anyone playing at their top right now. So you could watch that very carefully and see if Ohio State can pick it up, if Nebraska does a better job. I watched Cook the whole match with Nebraska, and his mannerisms made me think that he's just beside himself. He can't get those guys to be consistent and perform the way he would like. Penn State has been, it's been a roller coaster season for them. I don't know how they get any momentum, yet they have two of the best middles in the country. They still have trouble scoring points and they still make errors. So that's a hard one to figure out there. Purdue, you saw how athletic they can be. They kicked it in down 24-19. They kicked it in and put on a blocking demonstration that was, well, it just took number 4 out of the match at High Point. It was just amazing how well they performed under pressure. They could be a team, and I've said this, they could be a team to watch because they might be the hot team. I think Hugh was happy with Minnesota's grinding. They weren't exceptional. They weren't bad. They played and they won. And that's the way he wants them to play. But I'm telling you, a hot team can get Minnesota if they're not careful. They only score 17 points a set, but they only give up seven. They only make 7 errors per set. So a hot team that can score the ball can hurt Minnesota right now.
Yeah, Madison Smith, that outside for High Point, she struggled just a bit. Let's talk about those Longhorns, right? You've seen them at their peak this year, 4 wins against Baylor. And Mick, I was really high on Wright State. They are a talented team. They made their first NCAA tournament last year. They won their first NCAA tournament match. Head coach Allie Matters has a bright future, but Texas really, really just was head over heels better than that Raiders squad on Sunday.
That was the other team that didn't let the other team play. Texas just didn't let Wright State play, and I should have mentioned them. You're absolutely correct. And I thought Texas didn't try to do too much. They just executed. Velocity of the attack was really good. They didn't go to the middle as much as they have been, and they were able to score on the outside. So I think Texas is still a little bit of a mystery. We have to see where we are there.
So they're going to get Penn State. Let's go over a couple of these start times. 1 versus 16, a bit of an appetizer for volleyball fans. All of the matches on Sunday, except for Wisconsin, BYU. Of course, the Cougars cannot play on Sunday, so that'll be Saturday at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And then Pittsburgh, Minnesota at 1 o'clock on ESPN3 on Sunday. Nebraska, Baylor, 2:30 on ESPNU. Louisville, Washington, 3:30 on ESPN3. Penn State, Texas, 5 o'clock on ESPNU. That Florida, Ohio State match on ESPN2 at 7:30. Oregon, Purdue on ESPNU at 8:30. And then let's start with this one. It's the rematch of the 2017 second round. Western Kentucky may get their revenge, or will Craig Skinner finally get past that ceiling and propel themselves into the regional finals? 10 p.m. ESPN2, Western versus Kentucky.
Well, that's interesting because, they have been starting their seasons with scrimmages against each other. So it's not like they don't know each other. It's not like Travis Hudson hasn't been able to try to plan what he might do. I suspect that Kentucky's got too much for Western Kentucky in the scoring ability. I think Kentucky will have trouble with Western's system a little bit, but they're more comfortable with it because they have the last 4 or 5 years. I understand they either go to each other's place and they scrimmage before the season starts. And so they've gotten a pretty good understanding. I mean, think about the state of Kentucky. They got 4 teams in this tournament, in the 48 team tournament, and 3 of them are still in there. And Moorhead was no slouch. They were a very, very good team. So I think that match is well worth watching. Maddie Skinner may make the difference, quite honestly.
Yeah, those Skinner sisters are definitely powerhouses on the outside. Let's move our way from the end to the beginning. Oregon versus Purdue. Oregon, a team that really had very little trouble with Notre Dame early. Brooke Nuneviller is a superstar. Libero as a freshman. Now she's out there, the only Power 5 player that averages over 3.5 kills per set and over 3.8 digs per set. What needs to happen in that match for one of those teams to propel themselves to the Elite Eight?
Well, Nuneviller has to score points. I think there's no question. And that's the hardest thing for Oregon, to count on that. Her leadership, though, drives that whole team. If you could shut her down, I'm not sure that the rest of the team could carry that. But I've been wrong about Oregon a lot. They seem to play with the opponents instead of getting on them and really beating them. So I'm not sure, and I really thought that actually Oregon might not come out of that match to be here, and yet they looked awfully strong. They looked very confident. They look like they're tournament ready. Of all the Pac-12 teams, even Washington, I didn't think they played nearly to their potential the way I'd seen them, but Oregon is playing up right now, and they look hungry and they look healthy. And I did want to say this, and this is in Oregon's benefit, but their athletes looked like they got more physically trained during the regular season. It looks like they spent time during the season training because they look physically stronger and physically more ready to play than I've seen them all year.
Yeah, bouncing back from a 5-conference win 2019 and saying goodbye to a couple All-Americans in Ronica Stone and Willow Johnson. Carson Bacon is the one that really stood out to me in that Notre Dame match in the middle. And Morgan Lewis set a program record with over 800 hitting percentage. Working our way back, Ohio State, Florida, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's a football rivalry. It's a basketball championship rematch. Now the two teams meet in volleyball. You already talked a little bit about the Gators. How about Ohio State? They played Missouri, a team that was very strong in the regular season, took Florida to 5 sets, and DeBerg was almost a non-factor against the outsides for OSU.
Yeah, I think OSU has the ability to take people out. The trouble is that Florida's got too many people to take out, and Ohio State competes well for Jen Flynn Oldenburg. They really compete hard for her, and they're young. I don't think they'll be intimidated by Florida, but Florida is bringing their offense out of the back row as well as the front row, and Ohio State's defense is exceptional. That's the thing that's kept them in the Big Ten all season. I mean, if you've watched some of their matches, they have gone off the court and gotten balls that were just, you felt like humanly impossible. And it's not been one person, it's been the whole team. So they are highly motivated. It didn't look to me like they were playing yet at the top of their game. I think they're big gamers. I think they get up for the big games, and I think you'll see them get up for this match. And so I would make sure you tune into this one because this is going to be fun.
Yeah, this is the one that I've got circled. Kylie Murr is a dig machine. She was banged up in the first set against Missouri. Looked like she got hit pretty hard in the head. Didn't miss a point. Came to the bench, came back on the court, finished with 8 digs. But if Gabby Gonzalez, that's my X factor for this team. We know that Emily Londot is going to get her 15 to 20 kills. But if Gabby Gonzalez plays like she did on Thursday, 1 error, 12 kills, she's a double-double machine. So that's going to be the player that I watch out for, that second left side, because we know that Coach Oldenburg does have a quick trigger. She's not afraid to go to Janasia Moore as that third left side, adds a little athleticism for Ohio State. Penn State, Texas. This is a match, Mick, that you would see in the Final Four most seasons. But Penn State having a bit of a down year, didn't get to finish against Wisconsin or Nebraska. Both of those matches postponed. Russ Rose's team got a little bit of a warm-up in NCAA, and they looked a little shaky in the mid parts. I think one of the sets went to the 20s for the Aggies of North Carolina A&T. I'm not sure if they have the horses to keep up with the Longhorns.
You know, Russ Rose will motivate his team to have one exceptional match. If I'm Texas, I'm really worried about this. On the other hand, Texas has 2 quality middles that can stay with the 2 outstanding middles of Penn State. So this is a great middle battle if both teams can pass. And so I look for Penn State and Texas to both really work on the serving to try to get it into an outside attacking game. If Texas can keep Penn State from running the middle, they can handle the outsides for Penn State. But if Penn State gets the middles in, then they also can go over the top of the setter for Texas in 3 rotations, who's quite small. So it's really going to be interesting to see how Coach Elliott uses his players, because he's got one other 6'3" player that started for him on the right side that he's moved out of the lineup and moved the freshman coming in from Mexico, Para, into the left side. He could move Fields over to the left side and go big against Penn State and really cause them some problems scoring. I see he played her a little bit in this match the other day. In fact, I was interested in the whole thing of coaches playing a lot of players. There were coaches, Coach Cook, Elliott, a number of coaches were playing players that they don't normally start, and they got them into the matches. I think they think they're going to have to use a lot of different players. They're not sure about COVID and that sort of thing. So they're getting 9 or 10 players ready. So it was difficult for me to know, because in past tournaments I've watched, they haven't brought anybody in that's not going to be starting. They've just played their lineup. They played it the way they want to, and they get out of Dodge as quick as possible. That wasn't happening this weekend. There were a lot of players inserted that could be in matches later on as we go through the tournament.
Great point. Great point. Talking about Texas, I mentioned with Tyler Denning in our preview, the serving is such a huge point of that game. You know, against Baylor late in the season, double-digit service errors. So if Texas serve can keep Penn State on their heels, and Annie Kate Fitzpatrick on the left side for the Nittany Lions, she's going to have a big serving match as well. She can serve really, really exceptional. Did it against Purdue in their win against the Boilermakers at home. Washington and Louisville both fought off late surges. Washington beat Dayton in 5. Louisville took down San Diego on a tremendous match-winning block. Both those teams, it feels like, could either come out and play at the highest of their potentials, or it could be a little bit of a sloppy fest.
Yeah, you know, we could be seeing Dayton versus USD. I mean, that's how close those matches were, and errors really dictated who won. Not great plays, but errors actually, which was well, Louisville has been high error. They've been 8.8 errors per match, but boy, they score 18.8 points per game. And Washington is the same way. They've scored high, but they've given. I thought Washington did not use their middles in this first round like they had all season. They relied on both left sides. Louisville's 2 left sides, boy, those 2 kids got a lot of swings, but Washington's big out there. They're going to have trouble scoring like that against Washington. I actually give Washington the edge, but I think if Louisville gets hot, they have 3 pin hitters that score all the time. If they are able to pass well enough to get their middles involved, they'll give Washington a lot of trouble. And they have to come out and play right away. They can't work into the match like they did last night. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. Washington's huge, if you haven't noticed. I mean, they are huge.
Massive, yeah.
And
similarly to Washington State, actually. I don't know what they're doing up there in the Pacific Northwest, but they got treetops.
If you're intimidated at all, but I don't see Louisville's hitters worrying about that. They don't try to hit it on the floor. They use the block. They move the ball around. They have good velocity on all the pins. So the only thing you haven't really seen is, can their middles hurt people? So, and Washington middles are huge. They're both 6'3", 6'4", get their hands over the net. And he's got 3 of them. He can play any of the 3. So it's well worth watching. This will be another one. These are coaching matches, not just spectator matches. These are coaching matches. If you coach, you want to watch these matches, because you got to see how the coaches adjust and react and move their players around. And matchups will be critical in these matches. So
I love hearing the energy and the passion from you after all these years coaching. I think Washington has the edge, but I'm going to keep an eye on that connection between Dilfer and Aiko Jones. They are so in tune with each other. And if Aiko can get hot, she's one of those players that can put up 20, 25 kills in a big time match on a big platform like this one. Another one, like players and fans that maybe tuned out for a year and a half and only watched 2019 may look at Baylor and Nebraska and say, wait a minute, this is a regional semifinal match, 2:30 p.m. ESPNU, and Yatsiana Presley is going to have to play above and beyond to keep up with the Huskers, in my opinion.
Well, that's true. But the strange thing is Baylor can't figure out whether they want to play a 5-1 or a 6-2 still to this point. And this just drives me nuts as a coach, because I think it ruins their rhythm. Now, I don't know if they've committed now to the 6-2 or whether they do it depending upon whether they need more blocking or the matchups. I just think Presley has been out of system because they're not running a 5-1. When they run the 5-1 with the setter from last year,
Yep, Hannah Sedgwick.
Sedgwick seems to have her right here in the palm of her hand, and she can throw the worst set out there in the world, and Presley will think it's the best set in the world and terminate it. And that kind of connection really wins for you in a lot of cases. Baylor is not playing well yet, and I think it's because they keep switching. I mean, they lost to Texas State, and he played a lot of different players. And he played it like it was a throwaway match, not to take anything away from Texas State, because they played really well when they beat them. But I would think you would want to have your team going this way when the tournament is this close. So I don't know. And then you've got Nebraska, that if Sun shows up, you've got Stiveren scoring off the 1 foot. You've got Sun on the left side both of their left sides are potentially able to score. Nebraska should win, but Presley is a difference maker. You're right.
Yeah, and Callie Williams, that other setter you mentioned for Baylor, a transfer from Tennessee, she had, I think, 17 assists in the 5-set win over Pepperdine. I love watching Kayla Caffey. I talked to John Baylor, the radio voice of the Nebraska Huskers, just about the emotion that she brings, and she had it again in that 3-set win over Texas State. You got to have multiple screens on Sunday. That's the only option, but you get to watch about an hour and a half of unfiltered Kayla Lund against Stephanie Samity. Minnesota, Pittsburgh starts off our Sunday afternoon. This one could be fun because at times, especially without CeCe McGraw, Minnesota seems a little human.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with Minnesota. Don't get me wrong. Samity is a great right side hitter and can bring it out of the back row. And he's got some options if the freshman on the left side goes cold.
Landfair, yeah.
Landfair has been good for him all year. However, this is an ACC versus Big Ten kind of East Coast, Midwest battle of kids that are grinders. And if Penn State plays up, if you remember the Penn State matches last year against Penn State, the
Minnesota
Pittsburgh matches against
yep.
Penn State last year, they were all decided in the 5th set and just hitting war. I think you could see this kind of match from Pittsburgh against Minnesota. And this is Minnesota's real challenge right now. I think they get into the Final Four, but they've got to answer to Pitt. And Pitt's trying to prove something. And guess what? They lost 4 matches this year, and they were all last fall. They haven't lost a match this spring. So they think they can do it.
And they absolutely smoked Utah on Sunday night. I think Adana Rollins is going to be a big X factor in this one. If she could step up, if she could put together a high performance, low error match, Minnesota can really, hang on and depend on Samity's consistency. She, in my opinion, this year, Mick, I got to watch her twice at Purdue, best player in the nation, Stephanie Samity. And this is her chance to show it. And if Minnesota can get by Pittsburgh, as you mentioned, that Louisville-Washington Elite 8 match may not be as daunting as the Panthers. Finishing, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the key to Samity is keeping her in rhythm. And if you've watched Samity all year, the only time Minnesota is vulnerable is when they get her out of rhythm, or she somehow gets out of rhythm where she's muscling the ball. But when she's free flow out of the back row, in the front row, when she's free and flowing, she is just beautiful to watch and unstoppable. You're right. But there are times where that goes away, and I'm not sure what causes that. Maybe freshman setter, maybe a number of things, maybe just physical fatigue. But that comes and goes. And you're right about Rollins. If she shows up, then Minnesota's got a great chance. But if Pittsburgh's able to hold her under control, then it'll be a battle.
It's a good point. I'm sure Golden Gophers fans have memories of the moment getting a little too big in the Sweet 16. That was that Oregon match a couple of years ago where Everyone thought that maybe Seliger Swenson was going to take Minnesota to the Final Four at home. And funny enough, they're going to match up with a Pittsburgh team that people expected possibly Pittsburgh was going to go to their home Final Four as well back in 2019. So that'll start our Sunday slate. Let's finish off this episode with the BYU-Wisconsin match. BYU snuck in as a 16 seed, but they are playing exceptional. That UCLA match was probably the second best match of the Thursday slate behind that Western Kentucky 5-setter.
That was probably the most evenly matched of the teams out there. Both had numbers that deserved to be in the top 16 seeds. Obviously, they couldn't both get there because their numbers were lower, but I actually thought maybe UCLA would win that, but I saw something from BYU that I haven't seen because I haven't gotten to see BYU enough this year. They haven't been on TV. They pick it up, and they're capable of playing above their level. If they can reduce their errors, they'll be right in that match. And Wisconsin is not playing at their level that they played at in September. Well, not September, but
January, right?
It should be February or March. Yeah.
They just haven't had any consistency. The same thing, with Penn State and just the COVID stops and starts, and Washington State. A lot of teams are having to deal with that. They didn't play the best against Weber State. I would agree.
Well, their rhythm wasn't as good, especially with Redkey going behind and that sort of thing. And they have left sides and right sides that can score. The problem is they haven't developed a rhythm in critical situations. So they may be looking at, do we bring somebody in off the bench, or do we just let them work their way through this? Can we trust our left sides? All those things come into play now when you haven't played enough and coming into these matches. For coaches, they're sitting here, they've got these options. One of the things I think is going to be the most interesting thing is how the coaches use their talent. There are a lot of teams that have a lot of talent. And if they've brought them along properly so the kids are ready to play and not put out because they're not playing, so to speak, and then they come into the game and they're ready to perform, if the coaches can get them to that point, and this is the mystery of coaching, is how you do that. Some coaches are really good at it. Then you could see talent really winning out. However, if we haven't had enough chance to do this, then every sub might cost you a point, and you have to watch out for that. So there's going to be some really fun things, again, from the coaching standpoint to watch, and maybe spectators that watch a lot of volleyball want to dial in on that too and see how the coaches are using their talent.
Yeah, that should be fun. I mean, my gut tells me that Wisconsin is going to pass through. UCLA had 5 or 6 set points in the second on Thursday. They had the opportunities. The first set was up for grabs as well. I think they were at 22 or 23 all, and BYU just showed a lot of grit, and Heather Olmstad's crew is always going to show grit. I really just want some sort of storyline in that regional final with Wisconsin and Ohio State, the match that the Big Ten really wanted to have this year, but couldn't, 1 versus 2 in the conference, or the rematch of Wisconsin and Florida. So we'll see what might happen there with the Badgers if they can get by the Cougars.
Both of those would be heavyweight matches, and that's what you want to see. And back to the BYU UCLA, if either of those teams had a terminator, somebody they could count on, I looked for Mac May to step up and go terminate, and yet she off speed hit a ball that I thought she should have swung at for winning that set. Those kinds of things are what you watch for in the tournament. Who can step up and be really good in the moment. That's what you're going to see with these matches now when we get to the top 16.
So there we go. We've got 8 matches, 7 on Sunday, 1 on Saturday. Hope you guys enjoy that little appetizer. 8 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN3 on Saturday night. Mick, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a blast.
Hey, thank you. And I'll be there watching.
No doubt about it. Stay tuned for more little episodes as this tournament continues. He's Mick Haley. I'm Daniel Gillman. Thank you so much for watching this little NCAA regional semifinal preview.